Guys, our Boisai, Shovavim week 4. We're going to have a party. We're having some fun, guys. We're going on vacation. We're going to Toivel Island. You'll hear about it in a minute. Let's go. Let's learn a little bit about the makom of Tefillah, which places count as a good mikvah, and what we have to keep in mind within the Tefillah, when, how, when, what, where. Let's learn a little bit about that. Okay. So, Tefillah should be done by a woman in a mikvah that is a properly built mikvah, a properly supervised mikvah by one of the local rabbanim. Now, sometimes you have a case where a mikvah, it was built 80 years ago with 60 years ago, and it was done, they did a great job. They had chashuva people there. But now, there's nobody that knows what they're talking about, that lives within 200 miles. Lav dafka, it could be that everything is ganz fine and beseder, but it might need to be looked into. I don't know, Brownsville. My mother grew up in Brownsville. It was a place, there was lots of Yidden in Brownsville. Now, I don't know if there's any Yidden in Brownsville. I have no idea if they have a mikvah. I'm not being mitzvahs on the mikvah of Brownsville. I have no idea, know nothing about it. But if I would go to Brownsville today and I would see a mikvah, I would want to make some phone calls and ask some questions to make sure that there's still somebody looking after it, to make sure that the mikvah is still good. I'm sure it was built properly. But whether it's, there are stories of the bar that has the 40 saw that have been dried out. You need a rav to come, you need somebody. You don't even have to be the biggest grace lamdan or whatever, but you have to have somebody who's looking into it to make sure that everything is continuously on track. And obviously if the guy knows what he's talking about, that is much more preferable. So it's always kedai to try to go to a good mikvah. Now, Baruch Hashem, most of us live in a place where there is a good mikvah. So the question, where is there going to be issues and where is it going to come up? So when we go on vacation. Now if one knows or expects, or there's reasonable reason to believe that one's wife will be needing the mikvah when they go on vacation, it is always a very good idea to try to go on vacation in a place that is in proximity of a mikvah. Now, once upon a time, there was Jews in New York, and when they went to vacation, it meant they went to Miami, and that was the end of the story. Maybe the Poconos. And, the Jews of Yerushalayim didn't really do much vacationing. If they went to vacationing, maybe they went to Tzfas or Tveria, and that was the end of the story. The world has gotten much more exotic. The frum world, now they go to Yehupitzville, Haiti, Tahiti, to this, I don't know, wherever, all these places, these mountains, those mountains, they go to all different places, and sometimes there isn't a mikvah. Or sometimes there's Chabad Shluchim that go out to different places. They hope that one day we'll be able to build a mikvah. But now, in the island of Guam, I don't think there's a mikvah. So what do you do? So, I think somebody here mentioned to me about New Zealand, that there was a issue with the mikvah in New Zealand. I don't know if that issue was figured out or not figured out, but they had this issue as well. So what happens? You go to Yehupitzville Island, beautiful beach, beautiful ocean, no beautiful mikvah. So if a woman needs to go to the mikvah, and you're there because you missed the first 5 minutes, the first 3 minutes of the share when I said, try to arrange your vacation to not need the mikvah in Yehupitzville. But that's what happens sometimes. And the question is, what do you do? Is there an eitzah? So what always comes first question to mind is, could somebody use the ocean? Could somebody go to the beach, go to the ocean, and use the ocean as a mikvah for their tefillah? So that sounds good off the bat. You got 40 saw there. It's natural. Sounds great. Now we're going to see as I'm going to discuss, first of all, I would advise everybody, when it happens to you, ask a Rav, call up a Rav, ask about the specific situation. Now, it's going to range from medium b'diavad to extreme b'diavad. And I want to focus on what are the potential issues at hand, and how to avoid them, how to do the best of them, and we'll see how l'maisa it is, how l'maisa it isn't, but it's a geshmak sugya. So let's get involved. So, what are the potential issues? So when is tefillah meant to be done? So we all know a woman is Toiveles, she goes to the mikvah at night. Now, going into the ocean water at night. Now, there's a lot of potential issues. First of all, women are often going to be very scared to go into the water at night. It will be dark, presumably, and you'll have a very difficult time seeing any chatzitzas. You'll have a very difficult time seeing if the woman's hair completely went under the water. And especially with waves, it could potentially be complicated. And I would say that if you could, you could only potentially allow a woman to go post shkia. Really, it's supposed to be tzeis. I don't know the zmanim so well in Yehupitzville Island, and the thing is, you also probably don't know the zmanim in Yehupitzville Island. There's probably some vague zmanim there. But if you're going like 20 minutes after shkia or so, close to tzeis time, okay. I would only think that would be okay to go at that time if the woman was not scared, she was completely comfortable in the water. She would obviously have to be somebody who is a good swimmer, somebody who's used to the ocean, and somebody who naturally is just a not nervous, scared person. And you would probably need some light there to be able to see what's going on. If there's no light there and you can't see what's going on, that's a problem. So most of the time, that's just not going to work. Most of the time, there's not going to be light there in the middle of the ocean. I mean, you might have a full moon, and maybe, who knows, I don't know. But I can imagine that more times than not, it's not going to work very well. And a torch, no, you could go with a torch. I'm saying, usually the woman's not going to be so comfortable going in being Toiveles with a torch shining on her in the flashlight, for those that don't speak British, and with a flashlight or torch shining at them. It's a potential option. You want there's no plug-in, so it needs to be battery operated. But you want it to be schwach, you want it to be strong. I'm not saying it's not possible. Possible, yes. Complicated, for sure.
She needs to take all her clothing off?
So we're going to get to that. Bepashtus, yes. Bepashtus, that's how we do it. That is the normal way of being Toiveles. We're worried about chatzitzas, etc. And we'll see, maybe there might be some b'di'evids that we'll get to. But simply speaking, she's being Toiveles, we're not wearing anything that we can see chatzitzas, so make sure you fully get under, and there's nothing blocking any of her skin. Therefore, that is how we'd want to do it, and as based on what I just explained, doing it when it's really night is going to be very complicated. So as I'm going to explain later, in cases of b'di'evet situations, we can allow a day tefillah. So when we're going to allow that, we would preferably want it to be towards the end of the day, as I'm going to explain later. Or maybe even we could get her to do it a minute after shkia. Though a minute after shkia is not really is not really the best thing to do on the night following the 7 days, the 8th night, the beginning of the 8th night following the Shiva Nikiyim. It's really not supposed to be a minute after shkia. But if we do it on the 9th night, pretty much your tefillah will be a day late, then we will potentially be able to do that. We'll see. Obviously, akol lefi mitzias. If the mitzias is often right by shkia, it's not so dark. So if she could go on the 9th night, so to speak, a minute after shkia, and once again, hopefully you know there's manim in Yehupitzville Island, and then she go a minute after shkia, and if she goes a minute after shkia, then hopefully it won't be so dark, won't be so scary, and she'll be able to be Toiveles, and you'll be able to see whether the hair went in, and that will take care of that issue. That is a b'di'evet to go. If it's after shkia on the 9th night, that's a small b'di'evet. But sometimes, obviously, we're going to factor into this her comfort zone in the water, how dark it is in that area of shkia time, is she a good swimmer, etc. If she's going to be nervous going a minute after shkia, you might have to do it 45 minutes before shkia, or a half an hour before shkia, because then it's going to be light enough that she won't be nervous.
If you're doing that already, then what does it make a difference? Why should it be near shkia at all?
So there, as we're going to discuss later on, that there's the idea of tashmish being usher until in the nighttime, and really she's not supposed to go home to her husband before the nighttime, and we'll discuss that coming up. But as close to shkia as possible would be the best. I mean, obviously we're talking about before shkia. After shkia, as close to tzeis would be the best. But once again, once you get to tzeis, you're back into our scary night problem. So I think usually by shkia time, it's not so bad, the darkness, and it usually should be okay. But hakol fiya inyan. Okay, so that is b'diavad number 1. That you're going to be doing it once again. If it's going to be after shkia, it's a b'diavad. That's we can handle. Once again, we're doing it a day late, right after shkia. That's a reasonable b'diavad. That's not and if it's going to be a day tefillah before shkia, half an hour before shkia, let's say, that's going to be a b'diavad. But once again, in this situation, that would be allowed. Okay, issue number 2. We all know this concept of a mikvah lady. Yeah, you have the mikvahs all have mikvah ladies to ensure that everything is done properly. Now, a lot of people don't realize that's not just like a new modern day nice idea. The Shulchan Aruch brings down that you need a mikvah lady. You need a lady that's over 12 years old to check that everything was done okay. Now, a point that a lot of people don't realize is that the main job of a mikvah lady is to make sure that the hair went under. So once we have a mikvah lady, it's 100% the right thing for her to ask all the questions. Did you cut the fingernails? Did you check here? Did you check there? Did you take out the nuvering? Etc., etc. These are common questions that the mikvah lady may ask. Because nuvering, I see you look surprised. Nuvering is just a very common shayla that Rabbanim get of women that forget to take out a nuvering, which they're using for birth control purposes. So they forget to take it out before tefillah, and it's a very common shayla that Rabbanim get. So some of the mikvah ladies who hold they don't hold it's chadash asim in a Torah to ask the question about a nuvering, and they've added that into the list of questions in some places. Okay, but their main job is to make sure that the hair went under. So, what do you do in your huppetfil? So, if she could find another from lady, which will often be the Chabad Shliach's wife, but that's if there's a Chabad Shliach in that Yehupetzville, or it could be that other vacationer that she bumped into over there, who also happens to be there. I mean, I'm sure they had a minion when they go to Yehupetzville. Whatever, we're not going to discuss that now. But if she finds that other person there, I'm making jokes. I'm not saying it's so bad, because whatever, it's a different, maybe we could do a different share one time about minyanim, but there is what to be saimech on. I'm not saying it's the most lechatchila thing in the world, but there is what to be saimech on, to go to a place without a minyan, but that's a totally different discussion. I just don't want to leave it like I'm just having some fun here. Okay, so if she finds this other lady on vacation and says, "Oh, pleasure to meet you. Guess what? I have a job for you tonight." So if she's not too embarrassed to say that, then yeah, that might be weird, but whatever. So if she can find another from lady, great. What if she can't find the other from lady? There's no other. Could she get a goy? Could she pay the Indonesian lady who's there, or the Filipino lady to make sure that her hair went in? No. You need a Jewish lady that has that manas. Okay, could she ask her daughter? No, she doesn't want to ask her daughter because that's very weird. Technically, she could ask a 12-year-old girl, but that would be pretty weird. So she probably does not want to. So what does she do? So the Shulchan Aruch actually brings down that that there's another option. The other option brought down by the Shulchan Aruch is to use some form of a net to go and put on her hair, something that's not tight, a loose net, and therefore won't act as a chatzitza, and you duck down with that, and then you could be sure that all her hair went in, and therefore that would work. That's what the Shulchan Aruch brings down. In the ocean, I would be very reluctant to rely on this. It's one thing in a proper, calm mikvah, no waves. Okay, it's pretty easy to be fully in control and see what's going on. I'd be very nervous in the waves with this thing that she's already not comfortable, to hold the net on while making sure that she's not too tight everywhere, while the waves aren't a problem, and I would be worried in the ocean to make sure her whole body gets under the water. It's complicated. There's a lot going on there. I would not love this second option of the Shulchan Aruch. There is another option. The Beis Yosef brings the kolbai and the Igor, Sefer Igor and the kolbai, who bring down that the husband could be the mikveh lady. Now, at first glance, that sounds strange, because if you think about it, before she is Toiveles, the Isser HaChokos apply. He is not allowed to look at her while she is not dressed. So how could he do that? So we actually have the Noidim Yehuda come, and everybody calls this the Noidim Yehuda. As I told you, it's really the Beis Yosef quotes Rishonim, but the Kolbai. But Beis Yosef decided not to bring it down in the Shulchan Aruch. So I'm not a professional at exactly what this all means, but it seems to be, if the Beis Yosef decided not to bring it down in the Shulchan Aruch, it means that he's not going like it la'alacha. The Beis Yosef was more inclusive, bringing down more raid, but the Beis Yosef is more like the Shulchan Aruch is more as psak, and similarly he decided not to bring it down. However, the Noidim Yehuda comes to the rescue, and the Noidim Yehuda says, yes, the husband could be the mikveh lady. Oh, what about the Isser that during Zman Nidus, a man's not allowed to look at his wife not dressed? What are you going to do about that? Surely that's a problem. So, he says some svaras. It's miyad, it's going to be in a minute. And it's pas pesaloi. And since it's the whole idea of our chokos is that it doesn't lead to Isurim, over here, it's biyadai, it's going to be soon, it's pas pesaloi, and therefore it is okay. And Zak Noidim Yehuda, and the place can bring this down, that the man could be the mikveh lady. I actually, by the way, once got this question. It was an ocean. I got a question that somebody was vacationing somewhere in Switzerland, where they said he was many, many hours away from the closest mikvah. But there was the place where they were hiking, and there were mayans all over the place. And I actually called up my Rav Nachum Borovsky, to ask permission if I could give the heter, because I was a little nervous, and he gave me rishus to give me the heter, and I told him, yeah, you can rely on the Noidim Yehuda, and you could be Toiveles in that mayan, as we'll discuss soon. So I actually got that once. But for the normal people that stay around near mikvahs and don't go to Haiti, Tahiti, Guam, I don't know, wherever else there is to go nowadays, to this islands, to that islands, is this ever an issue? Does this ever happen? So you would ask me like 4 years ago, I would say, nah, you don't have to worry about this, guys. No need to give a share in this. This stuff doesn't happen. Now, 2.5 years ago, there was something called COVID, if anybody remembers. So, when this happened, especially in the beginning, people were very nervous about it. By the way, I was also very nervous about it. I was very makpid in COVID right in the beginning. I know. Half of you are thinking, oh, I respect this guy now. And the other half of you guys are thinking, what a loser. Okay, whichever one you are, you don't need to judge me. Yeah. So I was very makbid about COVID in the beginning. Yeah, think what you want. And so there was also a lot of mikveh ladies that were also makbid about this idea. So what happened often was there was people that they were in bidud, in quarantine. And what happened was sometimes they were in quarantine for like really good reason, like because their husband had COVID. Sometimes they were in quarantine because they just got off a plane. And as I heard of Rav, I was listening to a couple shiurim on this from Rabbi Kalas, his Geshmak, and he was saying that it's her mikvah night, like that first night that they get into Eretz Yisrael, but they're meant to be in quarantine for the next 2 weeks. Some amount of shock. If they have no kids, there's a mitzvah pruvu that needs to happen. And if they have a house full of kids in a little Yerushalayim apartment, if she doesn't go to the mikveh, there might be an issue of ritzicha. I'll explain it to you later. That was very geschmack. So you can't. If you're on top of in a little small apartment with 5 kids and this, it's important for her to be able to go to the mikveh. It's from a mental health standpoint.
The husband will give her.
Yeah, it's you're going to be bunched together in this small proximity for so long. Yeah. So what do you do? So don't listen so loudly. So some of these women went to the mikvah. That's what the Rabbanim told them to do. So, but how did it work? They were always the last people in the mikvah. They said, they're closing off the mikvah for the regular, normal people at what time. So they did take precaution. They're going to close the mikvah at whatever time. And at the later time, you will come. Now, the mikvah ladies, a lot of them said, hey, I don't want to get COVID. I'm not here to... It's one thing once off, but you want me every night to hang out with all the COVID-sters who are going to the mikvah? They weren't interested. So what do? So the Rabbanan said that the husband could rely on the Nedim Yehuda, and the husband could be the mikvah lady. So Afilu Bizman Hazeh, it was very common, especially in the earlier stages of COVID, when people were more nervous, and it was very common, lots of people in quarantine, if we remember, and that is what happened. And maybe there's some Rabbanim that said the nets, I'm not really sure, but the Rabbanim were definitely saying you could rely on Nedim Yehuda and allow the husband to be the mikvah lady, and this was a piece of limud that you had to have actually, known to be able to pass on this, because it was not so negeya for most people until that point. Okay, issue number 3. So the Shulchan Aruch brings down, by the way, this whole part of the Shulchan Aruch is in Kuf Tzadi Ches. It's in the later Sifim. Simin Kuf Tzadi Ches in Yordei, obviously, in the later Sifim. So in Sif Lamed Daled, it says, a woman shouldn't be Toivel in a place where she's afraid that people are going to come and see her. Why not? I mean, you're thinking like a sneeze point. But right now we're not learning Hilchos Tznius. Right now we're learning Hilchos Tefillah. Within Hilchos Tefillah she shouldn't, because she's going to do it rushed. And if she does it rushed, she might not do a good job. So therefore she can't be Toiveles in a place where she's scared that people are going to see her. Now, do you have that issue by the beach? Well, I would say it depends. There are certain places that you could go. I know somebody was telling me once in some Greek islands, not like the 2-3 most famous ones for vacationing. You go to some of these, smaller Greek islands or whatever, you drive 10 minutes down the road, and apparently you have completely empty beaches, because the population of the island is like 12, and it's completely surrounded on all sides by beach. So you drive down a little bit and you have a wide open beach and there's nothing to talk about. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard. Somebody was once telling me. Now, hakol fi the beach, hakol fi the woman. Meaning, you might have one woman that even if, we know we've been here for 3 hours, we haven't seen a person. I know, but somebody might come. So for her, it's going to be much more b'diavad, because she's going to be nervous that somebody might come. And therefore, Therefore, it's going to be very b'diavad for her to be Toiveles over there because she's going to be scared. Nice if she was Toiveles, b'diavad we say it's okay, but that's not geschmack. We have another woman who might say, listen, we didn't see anybody for the last 4 minutes, we're good. I'm not saying that's a good midah of Bas Yisrael. I'm just saying that klapi, the tefillah, you're in a much better position. And if she doesn't, or you might have a different woman, that a real prutza, who she just doesn't care. If that would be the case, once again, we have other problems, but this is not a problem, right? Fine. I'm glad everybody likes that. Okay, so Lamaisa, the degree of b'diavad that's going to apply, and that is going to be very dependent on the matzah, the metzias, and the woman, the way that how nervous she is on these things. Now, if it's not shaykh, the idea, there's no place that we know of how to get to where there's no concern. But one thing to point out, we're talking about doing this like shkia time. The beaches are not very crowded in shkia time. I'm not saying you should go to the main beach, but if you're going to go to like a side area, unless it's heavily populated, it's very often going to be okay. Obviously it depends on where you are, but it's not so crazy to find a completely empty place near shkia time. It's not a very popular beach going time.
So logistics to this anywhere very complicated because unless you have like a car on the beach, you got to get undressed somewhere. Oh
yeah, I'm gonna get there in a minute exactly how to work that out. But correct, the logistics are complicated. We're getting there. So the Maisa, if the Metzias is that there's nowhere that she feels comfortable being undressed and getting into that water. So, and by the way, depending on the situation, she might be able to get into the water somewhat dressed and get completely undressed while she's already in the water. So that's also potentially an option, depending on the situation. Now, if these are not options, if these are not options, so what could be done is that she could be Toiveles wearing loose-fitting clothing, which is a b'diavad. But she has like a long t-shirty type, roby type thing, so which is loose everywhere. So that is something that she could be Toiveles in. And as you realize, we're in the world of b'diaveds. But l'maisa, sometimes it's what you got to do in life. But we always strive for lechatchilas, but just adding to the potential b'diavad. So either, if it's a place where there's no fright, she went in that Greek island that I was talking about, she wasn't a specifically nervous person, she saw nobody came the last 3 hours, so then it's fine. She probably won't be hanging out there the last 3 hours, the truth is, but whatever. Because she's going to be doing her chafifa and etc. So it's talking about the last 3 hours, but then it's really okay, that point. But if it's a point where she's scared somebody's going to come, or she's wearing some robe of some sort, that obviously is not so lechatchila. Okay. Weiter. Issue number 4. And this is what Yaakov was referring to, I believe, somewhat. It's difficult, or maybe I think he was talking about a different logistic issue, but it's difficult to avoid sand. The beach tends to have sand. Sand, when you're coming home from the beach and that sand is just in your toes and your back and you're everywhere, and you're like thinking, didn't I take a shower at the beach? Why is the sand still everywhere? And it still is everywhere. So sand can be a problem. That happens to me when it comes to sand and mud. The Shulchan Aruch discusses there's a difference between thick sand, thick mud, and thin mud. And thick mud people are makbid about, and thin mud they're not makbid about. But some people say that we just mud, we light plug because we don't know what's thick mud, we don't know what's thin mud, and all the Mefarshim are discussing this. But one could argue, and the Shevet Levi actually says that's by mud. sand doesn't get stuck to your body, and therefore by sand that's considered something that is an ina makbedes, and it will not cause a chatzitza problem. This Shevet Levi is a tremendous chiddush, because it's true the Shulchan Aruch talks about women not being makbedas on thin mud. I think in today's day and age, well, I'm specifically going to say 2023, I think the women are makbedas by whatever type of mud you're going to put on their body. They're going to be makbedas. And sand is annoying. Sand's annoying. So it's very difficult to say the ain't makbedas. If you have sand between your nose, I was saying toes or nose, it's annoying, and women are makbedas. And I know you're going to say, well, by the beach you're not makbed for sand to be between your toes. Well, the halacha in Hilchos Chatzitza is, if you're going to be makbed in a different situation, that's considered makbedas. So just because you're not makbed by the beach doesn't help you. So what are we going to do about this? So b'diavad you can rely on the Shevet Levi, even though Rav Wosner might be my go-to favorite posek, but still it's very mechudesh. I have a difficult time relying on this Rav Wosner.
When you go in the water, where the sand...
So I'm going to discuss that in a second. When you go in the water, does that get rid of all the sand on your body?
Thought so.
Yeah? Maybe yeah, maybe not. I'm not sure. Maybe.
Hey, she's not going to build sandcastles beforehand.
So what I would say is, my personal advice is, you show up and she ties plastic bags around her feet.
You serious?
You could do Crocs. I just think plastic bags are more efficient. That's just a big deal. Listen, we're in a situation where she's not meant to be bumping into anybody anyways, right? So who cares if she's wearing plastic bags on her feet? That's what I think is the most efficient. I'm not saying I saw this written. I was thinking about what to do. Tie plastic bags around your feet, and use that. Walk into the water, and by the time you get to the water, you're gonna have no sand. You're gonna have no sand in between your toes. If you feel it's too weird, use Crocs at least, so it's not so much sand. But I think my experience is, you wear Crocs, you still get sand in your toes. So I would tie up plastic bags around my feet, and let her walk and get it where her feet are already in the water. Now, once her feet are in the water, even if she takes off the plastic bags at that point, and the first thing that her feet touches the water is something called mayim makdim. So if the water was the first thing to touch, even if something like this dirt from the bottom of the ocean touches her feet afterwards, it's not really such a big deal, because we have the mayim makdim. And that dirt that touches her toes from the bottom of the water, that stuff comes off much easier than the dry sand that it would adhere to her feet. So, I would say wear that. Now, she goes into the water, and what about I would say the most lechatchila way is if you could pull it off. Some of this is going to depend on her comfort level in the ocean, and some of it's also going to depend on some of it's going to depend on the amount of waves that there are. But if the ocean is calm, there aren't much waves. So I would say take those plastic bags, rip them open, or different plastic bags, whatever, and let her stand on the plastic bags, so she doesn't even touch the ocean floor. This is not absolutely necessary, but then you don't have any shalos of the mud, because when she's at the height where she's going to be Toiveles. By the way, the height where she's supposed to be Toiveles is this much above her belly button. Is the lechatchila, I think the term is zeres or something like that, above her belly button. That's how the height that she should go for to be Toiveles. So I would assume that would mean without the waves. Obviously you have to see the situation. If you go there without waves and that means you drown, it's better not to drown, because your tefillah won't be kosher if you're not alive. I'm saying, you gotta obviously, you can't kill yourself. But obviously it's going to be a lot easier with smaller waves. So if it's the type of thing everything's calm and you could rip open that plastic bag and put it on the floor, that's better. If you can't rip open the plastic bag because at that point there's too much going on, so then she could stand on the floor of the ocean, and that point that I dealt with before of you have the Mayim Makdimim, and that would be good enough. And if she wants to be Machmer, she should jump off the floor, like put her feet off the floor when she's Toivel in. That's if she could. Once again, if we're in a situation where it's hectic, it's complicated, it's nervous, then that's not going to be I'm not here to add any additional whatever. But if she's super swimmer and it's all calm, it's not a nervous situation, then if you don't do the stand on the plastic bag, then you could do the jump up put your feet off the floor while she does it. But
I'm definitely going to leave these bags floating and being
okay, once in our life we could, we could sacrifice the sea turtles for a little bit, and you won't use the straw for 2 weeks, all right?
Puts her feet on the ground, and then she just puts her whole body underneath whilst feet are on the ground. That's okay.
That's how you normally are Toiveles. A woman, by the way, who goes to the regular normal mikvah, she has the Mayim Makdimim on the bottom of her feet, and she steps on the floor of the mikvah, and she does not lift her feet. That's the standard practice. Over here, there might be a little reason to lift your feet because the sand from the ocean floor might get into your toes or whatever. I'm not saying it's necessary. I'm saying there might be a benefit. There's definitely what to rely on without doing that. Fine. Though, one thing to note about whatever is on her feet, she's not allowed to stand on something that's makabel tuma. So, this plastic thing is all fine. First of all, plastic pashas is makabel tuma no matter what it is. A plastic bag is probably not makabel tuma anyways. But that's why I just said rip it open, just in case. A ripped open plastic bag, there's nothing to talk about. If this is complicated, it's not makabel tuma anyways. We're really okay. Even pashas Crocs, most poskim would say is not makabel tuma because it's anything made out of rubber or plastic, which they didn't have Bizman Chazal, is pashas not makabel tuma. But there is plenty of room to debate on that, so I understand why somebody would not be masking to that. Obviously, a kol lefi the situation. Okay. Next issue is there's a halacha that a woman is not allowed to be Toiveles standing on something thin. Yeah. So let's say let's say the mikveh was too deep for her, right? And you wanted to put you had a little short lady, and she didn't know how to swim also, so the mikveh was too deep for her. So you want to stick something in the mikveh for her to stand on, so she can be Toiveles. So if it's a skinny thing, less than 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, she's not allowed. She's not allowed to do that because we're concerned that she's going to be nervous, standing on a small skinny thing, and therefore her tefillah is a problem. Like let's say you had a stool, you put a little stool, one of those little plastic stools that are not 4 by 4 tefachim. So that would be a problem because she might be nervous. Even we'll say the plastic ones, and we'll be soymech on that it's not makabel tuma. But it's a problem that she's going to be nervous. Now let me ask you a question. What's more nervous for this lady that can't swim? Standing on one of those little stools? Or would you say it's more nerve-wracking to be in the ocean with waves? So this is why I would say it very much depends. If you have a woman that's really a very good swimmer, she's comfortable in the ocean, right? So that's fine. It's really fine. I go into the ocean. I'm not nervous when I go in the ocean. Oh, I may have to stick my head under the water. I'm not nervous to stick my head under the water. I know how to swim. I've been swimming since I was a kid. So if you're somebody who knows how to swim, and properly, so it's fine. But if you have a woman who doesn't even know how to swim, going out there, I'd be very nervous based on this issue. Because the chashash is if she's scared, she's not going to do a proper tefillah. Trust me, this woman that doesn't know how to swim, that's going into the ocean, even if there's some very nice mikveh lady holding her hand, she's going into the ocean with waves. It's getting dark outside. She's not dressed. She's going to be scared. There's no question about it. and she's probably, who knows what, I don't know what's swimming around in this ocean over there. Who knows? She's gonna be scared. But if it's somebody who's comfortable swimming, it's gonna be all right. So I would say this is the biggest, a huge factor in my book, to decide whether this is okay. If she's comfortable in the water, okay, I don't have a problem with this. If she doesn't really know how to swim, I'd be very nervous about this point, because I imagine most people that don't really know how to swim are very nervous going deep into the ocean, under the water with waves and everything. I think that would be very nerve-wracking for women that don't really know how to swim, and I think that's a very big point.
But yeah, but what's the shallowest the water can be before attempting to do that?
So outside of ocean for a second, because being Toiveles in a wave is very, very not pashut. If it's going, I don't even understand what this means. Going up is a problem. Going down is okay. I don't know what that means, so I don't know. But in terms of a regular mikvah, the truth is, even if it's this shallow and she has to go flat down, that would work b'diavad. But that's not l'chatchila to do it that way. So in this situation, meaning I would be much more nervous. But once again, I would say like this: if you have somebody watching her, whether it's the Chabad lady, probably better the Chabad lady who's done this a couple times than the husband who's never done this, but whatever it is, and if you have somebody who's really supervising it and making sure that she's really able to get in, so I guess I'm okay with that if it's not so deep. But I'd be very nervous that a part of her didn't get under the water. So I think the answer to that real question is, however deep it needs to be, that you are certain that there wasn't one hair of her body that was out of the water. The deeper you get, the easier it is to be certain of that. So I think it'll be Metzias based. Yeah?
The deeper you get, the deeper this fully clothed helper is going to have to go with her and trying to hold a torch. And it's like, I can't imagine that working out.
Well, the helper could be dressed however the helper wants to be dressed. I would tell the helper to wear the schwimmkleid, the sneeze bathing suits, belaz. I don't know. But yeah, that's whatever. That's part of the job. But once again, I would really abandon the torch. I would abandon the flashlight. Definitely, if the woman's going to be somewhat nervous, and do it at a time, just around Shkia time, you should be fine without the flashlight. I think, right? I mean, once again, I'm not professional about how the zmanim of Yehupatzville Island, but I think for the most part, you're generally fine by Shkia time. Okay. Next issue is the temperature of the water, depending on the time of the year. If the water is too hot or too cold in a place, there's reason to assume that a woman's not going to do a proper mikvah. Imagine, when we're Toivel and Ari's mik, right? So you jump in, you jump out, and whatever. It's cold. It's not kishmak. You're not making sure your body's relaxed and you get in. No, you get in, you get out. Yes, I know there's that breasted guy who's dipping 1,001 times Keneged Nana Nachma Muman or something. I don't know exactly what's going on there. But for everybody else, you get in, you get out, right? So that's what you do. So if the water is going to be cold, and she's going that makes it even more b'diavad, that she's not going to be comfortable getting in if the water isn't at the temperature that it's comfortable to go in. But I think usually most people go to Yehupatzville Island at the time of the year where it's geschmack to go in the water. Love dafka, but more times than less. Fine.
Even a nice climate by Shkia time, everything was cool.
Yeah, no, correct. So it really could be an issue. So as I said, depending on how many boxes you have checked, it varies from medium b'diavad to very b'diavad. Yeah. Okay. Now, what about a lake or a river or a mayan, a natural spring? Well, what about being Toivel in these places? So let's get a little background. There's two different, well, there's really three, but we'll call it two for now, two different types of places that somebody can be toivel in. One is a mikvah, and that works for a nida, that works for a ziva. It does not work for a zav, by the way. The other type is a mayan, mayim chayim, we'll call it, where you're connected to a internal water source. Now, for like a zav, for example, we need a mayan. We need some form of mayim chayim. Yeah. Now, there's a difference in halacha between a regular mikvah and a mayim chayim. A mayim chayim, a river, a mayan, whatever, the water is allowed to be moving. It's allowed to be what's called zeichlin. If you want to like scare like somebody, you tell like the brisker guy next to you, I heard the mikvah has a shayla of zeichlin. It's like one of those things. The filter. So there's all different hacks about there's some chumrah steps, all different types of stuff out there. Well, the Ma'aseh Rabbanim that build our mikvahs take care of these things for the most part. But a mikvah is not allowed to have moving water. But a mayim chayim, a mayan, yeah, sure, a river, the water moves, right? And that's okay. When it's connected to the water source, it's okay. Somebody actually told me the mikvah in Farakwe, or my wife's from Farakwe, so the mikvah in Farakwe used to be swampland. So it's also very close to the ocean. It used to be swampland, and therefore the bedrock water level, I'm not sure what the exact technical term, is very, you don't have to go very deep underground to hit the water. So apparently when they were digging the mikvah, when they were building it, they made sure to drill down to hit the underwater water level and have water come up into the mikvah, and to keep a connection from the underground water source to the water. Therefore it will have the din of a mayan as opposed to just the din mikvah, and therefore if there was any shaylas of zeichlin or anything like that, it wouldn't be a problem because it would have the din mayan. If that's true, I don't know, but that's what somebody told me, which I thought, if it is true, I'm like, that was a good chap, whoever thought of that, definitely not the normal standard practice. Yeah. Now, so could I go in a mayan? So seemingly yes. If you're in a place, the water's coming up right there, beautiful. Even a mayan's better than a mikvah. So as I told you, I once got that shayla from Switzerland, and the person asked me, I said, yeah, there's hikes that they're going on, and there's tons of these mayans around, and l'chayra, it's great. What about a river? So a river kind of depends. What do we have more of over here? Is it more rainwater that's coming in, or is it more mayan water? Is it more underground water source? Where's the water coming from? Now, you just don't get confused. You might be thinking that water. What do you mean rainwater is good? Mikvahs are rainwater. Rainwater is good to build a mikvah. But a mikvah has the problem of zeichlin. And if there's rainwater flushing in, so zeichlin isn't good for a mikvah. Zeichlin could be mitam in the mikvah, could mess up the mikvah. So therefore, there's a question. Therefore, if it's going to have a din of a mikvah, it's going to be a problem. If it's going to have a din of mayan, then it's going to be okay. So let's take a second to think about this for a second. What are we going to assume? So it's actually a little bit of a machlokes amoraim in the Gemara. Before I actually get into the machlokes, let me just point out one thing. Sometimes it's obvious, right? If you would have went 2 weeks ago before it started raining, a week ago before it started raining, and you see some water anywhere in this country, you know it's not rainwater, because it must come from a natural source. If there was water, it was from a natural source. It was obvious. If it's obvious, the halacha is obvious, it's obvious. But sometimes it's not obvious. And by the way, if you go in the middle of summer, it's also obvious. It's fine in this country because it doesn't rain in this country only a couple of months. But what if you go towards the end of the winter and you see some water going in some air, you see some river? How do we know if it's more rainwater or if it's more natural water? So Avud Shmuel, he was worried, and he said you can't use it. Shmuel paskin, you don't have to worry about it, because he said for every gallon of water that comes down, 2 gallons of water come up from the ground. Then it's gallons. I'm saying gallons, liters. For every liter of water that comes down, 2 liters come up. I guess however it works exactly, that the water goes under the ground. Obviously the water under the ground and the bedrock that comes out from mayans originally at some point were part of the rainwater system. We don't need to do earth science here, do we? Fine, but however it works. So he said there's always more water coming from down than from up, and therefore you don't have to be worried. L'maisa, how do we paskin? So the Ramah says, lichatchila we're machmer not to use it if we don't know. B'diavad we can be mekel. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that as long as it didn't rain in the last couple of days, you could be mekel and be Toiveles. Be Toivel in that mayan. But if in the last couple of days it was raining, then you have to be choishish that it's roiv rainwater. It would have a psul of zeichlin, and therefore it wouldn't be a place that you could be Toiveles. So once again, if everybody knows that there's a big natural mayan and the water is rushing out, even if it just rained, you're allowed to go to the Rizmik. Everybody knows that the Rizmik is a mayan, and there's in Eretz Yisrael, there's tons of mayans all over the place, and if the Metzias is barer, what it is, then you could use it. I would say Lamaisa, and forget the shell in Eretz Yisrael, actually, let me take a step back. In Eretz Yisrael, everybody has a mikvah to go to. Every woman has a mikvah to go to. Maybe the shell is like by the barbecue grill. Could you be Toivel the barbecue grill before you want to use it for the barbecue? That might be a shell because you don't want to schlep to the mikvah. No woman should ever go to Mayan in Eretz Yisrael. But when you're in Switzerland, and you want to know whether or not to go into that mayan, so if it didn't rain in the last couple of days, or that spring, that river, if it didn't rain in the last couple of days, the mitzvah we can make on the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Obviously, there's probably going to be a makam tzarach if the shayla is coming up.
Can you ask locals, and they'll tell you what it usually looks like throughout the whole year if they say it's always at this level?
Yeah, l'chayr you could. It has to be Mesiach L'fituma, meaning you don't tell them, I need your halachic edus on this matter to render a halachic decision, because goyim have no nemanis. But if you're able to get them to tell you Mesiach L'fituma that that's the situation, then l'chayr it would be okay, and you can be soymech on them to that it's a pure mayan. What about a lake? So a lake, you actually have to be nervous sometimes. Sometimes there's man-built lakes. Sometimes there's a man-built lake, and they ran a pipe there and they filled it up. That's a bathtub. That doesn't work. But if it's a natural lake that has some natural source that's filling it up, then we can rely on the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch that as long as it wasn't filled for the last however many days, you could be Semech and be Toiveles there. But once again, obviously, as I mentioned, you have to make sure no mud, no this, no that, and that will be okay.
Has it been a mikvah?
It has been better than a mikvah.
It's considered Mayim Chaim a lake?
Well, a Mayim Chaim, I think most lakes have intake and outtake, I believe. No? I think so.
Intake?
Meaning most lakes have like a little stream or river running into them, and a stream or river running out on the other side.
The water's...
No?
Yeah, honestly.
Somewhat. No? I guess you have what is it, filled up with rainwater?
Yeah.
Alright, if it's filled up with rainwater and it's mamish and natural lake, so then it would be a mikvah. But then again, you have to ask a shayla in that case, because you're going to get into all sorts of zeichlin issues based on the speedboat that's going on the other side, and there's all these little waves coming. Is that zeichlin? Is that not zeichlin? Guys, I just got out of my pay grade. Call up somebody who's within that pay grade to find out whether that lake could be used as a mikvah. Okay. Next section I want to go to is the timing of the mikvah. Right? When could a woman be Toiveles? How long have we gone so far over here? 54 minutes. Oh, I didn't realize how late it got. Okay, let's see what we could do. Yeah? The timing of her tefillah. When is she could could she be Toiveles? So we know normal woman, normal situation, after Shiva Nikiyim, that night, we call it the 8th night, she's Toiveles. Perfect, right? Great. Now, when is she Toiveles? She's Toiveles, after Tzeis. What if she would be Toiveles during the 7th day? So actually, Midraisa would work. Midraisa works to be Toiveles of the 7th day of the Shiva Nikiyim.
Works ages before.
Huh?
Midraisa.
No, even if she was a Ziva Gedola. Even if she was a Ziva Gedola, it would work. But if she would see Dam after the mikvah, Lima Freya, it will pass her Shiva Nikiyim. But if she can't do it on the 6th day. 6th day wouldn't work, Midraisa. 7th day would work, Midraisa. But Lemafreya could get messed up. We could see why this would get into problems. If a woman was Toiveles, she had tashmish with her husband, and then she saw Dam Nida, Lemafreya messes up the Shiva Nikiyim, and not a pretty story. So you understand why Chazal would not allow this. Should I just save the rest for next week? Because it's getting late? I think so, right? Yeah? Save for next week? I guess we'll save for next week. I thought I was going to get further on this. We'll save the rest towards next week. We have Zman Tefillah. We'll actually continue that further. I guess we had a little bit of more fun than I thought we were going to have on our trip to Yehopitzville Island. It was, we had a good time, and we also went to Switzerland, and it was Geschmack. Went to lakes, Mayans, beaches. Yeah, I feel like I don't even need a vacation anymore. All right, Shkach, thanks for listening, and I guess we'll take over for the next part next week.